Comrades, that's Trevor Prescott in his own inimitable style. And I'm sure we could listen a little longer. I am to tell you that you are to be reminded of the annual Founders Day service scheduled for April 17th, Sunday, April 17th, at 11 o'clock in the morning at the St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Cathedral. Please come out, make an effort to attend and support the party as it celebrates its annual Founders Day service, April 17th, 11 in the morning at the St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Cathedral on Gemmas Lane, followed by lunch at party headquarters immediately thereafter. $50 per plate is the cost. All are invited. I'm told let's go straight on to the next speaker. We want to welcome to the city, the one who welcomes us to the city tonight, Colonel Jeffery Bostic.
Good evening to the people of the city of Bridgetown. Good evening to the people of Barbados. I am in a very difficult position. Coming after Trevor Prescott, who delivered a very, very good presentation, and then before the political leader of the Barbados Labour Party. So right now I feel like I am playing cricket with the BCL. But I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that many people who played cricket with the BCL went on to play for the West Indies and became very, very, very great players indeed. I did not expect that I would have been here addressing you this evening. And I say so because we have had a very, very difficult week dealing with the estimates of revenue and expenditure. But I think that the fact that the Barbados Labour Party is mounting this platform this evening is testimony to the fact that we are willing to sacrifice anything on behalf of this country. We wanted to be here to share with you. It is also for me a very interesting period of time, and I want to start by making a few comments on a matter that I wanted to address for a long time, which is very dear to my heart. There's been a lot of talk recently of a third party. And I've heard some people on the radio saying that neither the BLP or the DLP have done anything for Barbados. And it pains me that sons and daughters of working class Barbadians could make a statement like that in a post-independent Barbados, post-independent, where so many achievements have been made on behalf of the people of this country. That pains me. And I say so because we must not allow people to think that the two parties have failed, because we want people to understand that every single vote will count during the next election. And we don't want votes to be going in other directions that could stop us from doing what is required, which is to remove the Democratic Labour Party from office. And I say this to you, where independence is concerned, I am glad that we are celebrating it. We may have different views as to how we should, but let me say this. The Barbados Labour Party served for 24 glorious years of those 50, man. 24. And we should not really depend on anybody to indicate to the remainder of Barbados what it is exactly that we have achieved. And I said it last week and I will repeat it this week. It is time that some person or persons within our party chronicle the activities of the Barbados Labour Party in those 24 years of the 50 years of independence. Because when you look at it, I am absolutely certain that you will come to the conclusion that we have made a significant, if not the most significant contribution to the development of this country. Because when Kofi Annan was talking about Barbados punching above its weight, it was because of the glorious work that we did. I want to address you also as it relates to the estimates of revenue and expenditure. Truth be told, I am not going to confuse you with figures this evening, because I will say this every time I have to speak on this subject. Fiscal deficits don't mean anything to the average Barbadian. A fiscal deficit cannot help you to know where the next food is coming from. Primary surpluses and those terms will not help you to get a job. And we hear all kinds of figures coming from the central bank, one set of figures. Ministry of Finance, another set of figures. And my political leader presented some facts and figures. But I will say this to you, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to depend on the Minister of Finance. You don't even have to depend on the leader of the opposition. You know why? You live it every day. And who live it, feels it, and you know by your experience. Because you feel it every day. You know by your experience. If you come on Bostic Road alone, you will know by your experience. Because you experience it every day. When you see the number of shops that have closed, friends that I had who used to drink vodka and whiskey that have turned out to brown rum and 4 for 10. He who feels it knows it, man. When you walk around the city and you recognize that there are about 40 establishments, Broad Street, Swan Street, Bay Street, that have for rent or for sale signs up. First time in the history of this country. Truth be told, nobody can tell you anything about that, because that is reality. When you have situations where the average shop in Barbados, the average bar, is struggling, and in order to make ends meet, shopkeepers have to rely on a little karaoke. And even to do a karaoke now is a problem. Some people are able to do it every week, and others once a month, sometimes once every 2 months. And I don't know what the rationale is behind that. But even for the poor person to be able to make ends meet, that is a difficulty. So you don't have to rely on figures. You feel it. You know it. I was a little disturbed when I got here this evening. And I saw a copy of a letter that was sent out to the fish vendors in this area and those who have little bars in the complex over there. And what disturbed me about that was that 1 week was given to those persons to remove the tents and everything that they have up by the market division because of some complaint or some little dispute that 1 or 2 persons have been having. But I want to assure the people on this street that early next week, I will make it my business to intervene on your behalf. And I'm not going to do Dixie right now because I don't have all the facts. And I like to be fair to people. But somebody will have to tell me which part of Adamsville states that Oistins could be flooded with tanks grammar that you can't even pass. And Bostic Road that is struggling. People struggling to make ends meet, and you are now telling me now that things are picking up barely slightly, that you're presenting another obstacle, another impediment. Have no fear. I will deal with this matter, and I will treat it as a matter of urgency. And I want to say to the people on Bostic Road, and I'm not being parochial here, this is something that has to happen. Bostic Road must be revived. Has to be revived. And I want all of the shop owners, shopkeepers, bartenders, whoever on this street, irrespective of your political affiliation, join me, work with me. Let us from crop over to independence. Let us do something that is special from Baxter's Road to Nelson Street. I have the plan. I just need your support. During the estimates and a couple other debates before then, I was made a laughing stock to some extent because of a project that was done called the Kensington Beautification Project. And it was said that the houses just had, the front of the houses were painted and that was it. And people on the other side made a lot of mock sport at that. But truth be told, I am not ashamed of what was done. And I'll tell you why. I will tell you why. Back then, and I thought that this thing, a thing of the past, would have been laid to rest. But it hasn't been laid to rest, so I have to deal with it. I was given a project, monies that were controlled from the Prime Minister's office to beautify parts of the city of Bridgetown that were connecting roads or whatever to Kensington Oval. There was a limit of $20,000 on those houses that were selected, not by me. Not by me. In fact, I don't even think at the time that I was a candidate. But by urban development and the ministry, a team came around, they went around, they looked, and they made the determination. I was given a total of 68 houses to fix. Would you believe that I ended up fixing 148? I was supposed to be given a salary, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't take it. That money was used to employ people to do some debushing and cleaning up around the city of Bridgetown. But I'm only raising that to show you a comparison, and that project, I believe, was less than $2 million. But the same people, ladies and gentlemen, in government, an Inter-American Development Bank program of US $30 million to provide proper housing and infrastructure for some depressed areas, not only in the city of Bridgetown, as in Cats Castle and Greenfield, but short up the road in Garden Land and Allen View in St. Thomas. And, you know, I was accused of just painting the front of the houses. But would you believe that these men didn't even paint anything at all? The money went back because the government refused to execute the project. $30 million US. One small part of it was spent in the Garden Land. And you know the excuse for Greenfield? Oh, the surveyors said that they were frightened to go into the Greenfields. Frightened my foot. It seems as though whenever there's a project that should benefit low-income people in Barbados, that there's an issue. And that is something I will fight. I will fight with all of my breath and my strength, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reminded that 47 out of the $60 million went back untouched. Do you know what that would have done to a place like Cats Castle, where Zandarine would have been able to make some money from the workers buying some drinks, and the people who sell food would have been able to sell some food and make some money, and people would have been employed from within the areas? And all of this went to nothing. And then, when we move still within housing, because that is the ministry that I shadow, and I'm not bringing figures and things to you today, I'm bringing some facts. Because I said to the Minister of Housing that the housing program, which the government touted as the flagship for the government's performance during the first term, housing every last person. And I want you to repeat, because you know that that program really means houses empty, lacking people. You know that. Because when you look around this country, you see a whole heap of empty houses. And if empty vessels make most noise, what would you say about empty houses? And you know the reality about this? Let me tell you. I have checked and I have put everything together because I like to look for patterns. I like to look to see where policy is leading. And I realize that anytime there's a housing project that should benefit low-income earners, those projects were not pursued with any sort of vigor. But whenever there were housing projects to benefit others, those projects were pursued. And that's why we have a lot of empty houses right now. Because it is a shame that after such a long time, so many housing units at the Grotto could still be empty. Housing units that not a fella from the Bayland can get in because he can't afford. That is a travesty of justice. What was supposed to have been a project for low-income earners has now reached the point, because of the exorbitant construction costs, where those units can no longer be rented to anybody that is considered as low income. They are now priced at about $450,000 each. And this is the reality, and this is the dilemma that the government faces. No low-income earner can afford to pay that. No low-income earner, or very few, can afford to rent the ones or pay for the ones, at Coverly. Those persons who have money ain't living in the Grotto. Neither are they living at Coverly. So you see the position? And the Honorable Minister can only say that during the first quarter of this year that there will be a solution to that problem. But I would like once again to remind him that the first quarter of this year ends this month. It ends this month, and there's no solution to the problem at the Grotto. And the Grotto, like several other estates, remain with several vacant lots. But that's not all. That is not all. There were a large number of persons within the urban corridor and all the St. Michael constituencies that should have benefited from now by the opportunity that was made available by the Barbados Labour Party for them to purchase the land that they are on, because Bridgetown and a lot of the St. Michael areas have a lot of tenantries. And you, the people, some of you who live in those areas that are seated and standing right here before me, you were supposed to have benefited in the same way that people benefited from the rural project. And up to now, nothing has happened in this regard. You are still waiting years after things were put in place by the Barbados Labour Party. And I will tell you, you will continue to wait until the Barbados Labour Party returns to office in order to give you what is rightfully yours. You're not getting it. There was a General Workers Fund that was created within the National Housing Corporation. A very, very good initiative by the Barbados Labour Party. Up to now, I believe that fund now stands probably in excess of $100 million. But no loans are being disbursed for people to do repairs to their homes. And it is very interesting that between 1986 and 1994, only about $15 million in loans were disbursed. That's under previous Democratic Labour Party administration. From 1994 to 2006, under Barbados Labour Party administration, over $60 million in loans were disbursed. That is the difference between the two parties, ladies and gentlemen. One of the most glaring omissions that I saw in the estimates, and they call it an omission, very, very little was allocated to maintenance. And this is something that concerns me greatly because it affects a very large number of persons in this country. For the last 5 years, several of the government's housing estates have not had any maintenance. If you speak to the people in Kensington Lodge, they will tell you that. If you speak to those at Deacons, they will tell you that. At Pondside, they will tell you that. And conditions in those estates are deteriorating rapidly. Well, I bring no comfort to the residents and the tenants of those estates because you have to suffer some more. No money was allocated in the estimates to deal with the magnitude of the problems of maintenance that we have in this country with the government estates. And equally important, all of those estates, those housing developments that are uninhabited and closed, they too will require millions of dollars in maintenance before people can occupy them. Because a house is a living thing, and you have to live in the house to give it some life. If not, the things will malfunction. So if you are a government that really cares about people, and especially the most vulnerable, then providing the necessary maintenance, which is a requirement of the National Housing Corporation, that should be and must be a priority. And I say to the minister, I've said it before, I repeat it again, there's no point in building any more new housing in Barbados right now. If you cannot disperse the ones that have been completed already, if you cannot maintain the ones that you have already, don't worry about building new ones, man. Change the policy now to maintenance and maintain what you already have. You agree with me? Good. You passed the exam. Then we come now to the problem associated with those people who were told that you will get your house, the conveyances. And I will say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that this is part of the problem that the National Housing has, I believe. Because those persons, although they don't really have the ownership of the homes right now, I don't think they're paying the rent. Okay? And the shortfall of cash is affecting the National Housing Corporation in such a big way that I can tell you that that corporation, and nothing against those who work there because they're very good people and they work hard, but they don't have the money to do what is required. They are operationally in trouble. And I think it is about time that the Minister of Housing comes to the people of Barbados, to those persons who are expecting those conveyances, to tell them the truth. To tell them the truth, because what they're not telling you, ladies and gentlemen, is that that initiative was not thought through properly. You see, by giving you apartments, let's say in Kensington Lodge, that now becomes like a condominium. And there's a condominium act. You know that there are certain common areas like the sewage, like lighting, especially external lighting, even electrical, that has to be dealt with in totality. It can't be dealt with in isolation. So that is the problem that they're facing right now. And in addition to that, you can't have a situation where the NHC owns some of the apartments and some are self-owned. So who is going to be responsible for the overall maintenance? Those are the issues that they're not telling you. Truth be told. And now, let me come to the whole question of urban and urban development, because that is another area that is shadowed by me. And I want to say this. I have a real serious concern with the Urban Development Commission in terms of its policy of the urbanization of Barbados, urban renewal. The Barbados Labour Party had a good policy. It could have been better, I would admit, in my view. But it was a good policy. several things were done simultaneously. And what we are finding now is that very little, if any, thing is being done within the urban corridor. We don't have, not a lot of roads are being repaired or fixed or replaced, only in certain areas. And I find it very, very interesting to note that you will find one part of the Bayland where the roads are fixed, and just across the street, it seems as though the machines broke down or ran out of fuel. But what that was really was the difference between the BLPL side and the DLPL side. We talk about the eradication of pit toilets from the landscape of Barbados. Well, I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, we have not yet reached the mountaintop of our development. We cannot reach the mountaintop of our development until we eradicate pit toilets off the landscape of Barbados in totality. And that must be a priority of any caring government. And I hope when the Barbados Labour Party is returned to office, that we will continue to make that a priority, because it was. We cannot reach the mountaintop of development when the queues at the Salvation Army every year for hampers continue to grow with more and more young people, and the daily feeding queues continue to expand. That tells us that we are nowhere where we ought to be.